We often hear the story of Lewis and Clark as a grand American adventure, a heroic journey into the unknown. But there's a much deeper, more complex story that's rarely told, one that reveals the true cost of this famous expedition. In 1804, when the Corps of Discovery set out, they weren't just exploring. They were acting as agents of the U.S. government, carrying a message of American sovereignty. President Thomas Jefferson's instructions were clear. Establish trade, map the land, and inform the native nations that their land now belonged to the United States. This was the first step in a long, painful process of U.S. expansion. Imagine this. Strangers arrive in your homeland, a place your people have lived for countless generations. They hand you a medal with a new father on it and tell you that the world you've always known is now under their control. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a declaration. For the many tribes they encountered, like the Shoshone-Mandan and Nez Perce, this was a profound disruption. The expedition journals are filled with detailed observations of the land and its resources. This information wasn't just for science. It was a roadmap for future settlement. The trails Lewis and Clark blazed soon became pathways for fur trappers, traders, missionaries, and eventually, waves of settlers. This influx of outsiders brought devastating consequences. Diseases like smallpox, to which indigenous people had no immunity, swept through communities, wiping out entire villages. The delicate balance of trade and intertribal relations that had existed for centuries was shattered. The U.S. government used the information gathered by the expedition to create policies that would systematically dispossess native nations of their land through treaties that were often signed under duress or outright broken. The buffalo, central to the culture and survival of many plains tribes, were hunted to near extinction, a deliberate strategy to force native people onto reservations. The very way of life that Lewis and Clark had documented was systematically dismantled in the decades that followed their journey. So, while we acknowledge the expedition as a feat of exploration, we must also see it for what it truly was, the beginning of the end for many indigenous ways of life.
It paved the way for westward expansion.
But this progress came at the immense and tragic expense of the people who were already there. Understanding this hidden history is crucial to understanding the full story of America. It reminds us that every historical event has multiple perspectives, and the voices that have been silenced often have the most important lessons to teach us. Thank you for watching. If you found this perspective valuable, please like, share, and subscribe for more hidden histories.